Well, greetings and salutations to the 310 tribe, wherever you might be tonight. Hopefully, everybody is doing well and having a uh, a restful 4th of July. I I don't know who was able to catch yesterday, but if you want, before we get started, give me a thumbs up in the chat if you guys can hear and see me. All right, excellent. Well, it's never a dull moment here in these last days, is it? Just one thing after the other. Obviously, tonight, top of mind for me is the disastrous flooding in central Texas there in Kerr County and those cities along the Guadalupe River. I am really just, man, it's hard. It is so hard to listen to the stories of those who witnessed the tragedy unfold so rapidly in the wee hours of the morning of July 4th. I just can't even fathom you being out there with your. I mean, how many times? I don't know about you guys, but we've gone camping before many times, and most of the time that's always around some body of water because that's generally where people are drawn to. You want to go out on the boat or you want to fish, jet ski, whatever. I mean, that's just the natural place for those for that to happen. Well, that happened there in around Camp Mystic and all up and down the river there. I mean, really, we don't know the full scope of the damage just yet because a lot of the roads and bridges are damaged, or just the debris is so strong and heavy in those places that a lot of the county is still cut off, so everything is still going by air. They've got drones up, they've got teams out, they've got guys out on boats, and many, many volunteers are out there searching through the brush and the trees, in and around the waters to look for, hopefully still survivors. But if not survivors, then the recovery mission for the remains. Right now, I have the death toll is around 51 is estimated. Now they had a death toll earlier that was it had 28 adults and 15 children thus far. I don't know. With the 51 is kind of a new number that's being pushed out there, but I'm assuming that it has to do a lot with the campers and a lot of the folks that were out in RVs that night, up and down the river and in different places along the Guadalupe River and any the Comal and any of the other places down there that would have seen flood surging. So keep our prayers out for those. I want to. We've got two guys. I'm sure you know this. Obviously, Samaritan's Purse is the big uh, response organization that's coming out there. But I also want to show. Let's see if I can do this. Well, Samaritan's Purse is at the bottom there, but TroyBrewer.com. He's not with Samaritan's Purse. Let me see if I can edit this so you guys can save it. That's what I was doing. I was doing something, then I got busy. uh, but TroyBrewer.com, he was one of the speakers that went with us to Ireland back in February and March. He's in that area and he does all sorts of missions. Mostly his missions are dealing with human recovery of children and things like that from other places. But he is in the area. I think he's providing food trucks and other resources and support and probably chainsaw crews. But you can support him at his website through his webpage. And really good guy, very proactive. It's killing me that I'm not there. I would be down there already, but we're still dealing with the flood remains from this place here. So um, right here where my glass is sitting. It's like super itchy. Um, okay. So we've got TroyBrewer.com. Please, if you can and feel led to support him, he is actually boots on the ground down there. So man of action, as well as a pastor and leader of many different ministries. Very good person, and I highly recommend him. Him or Samaritan's Purse are the ones that are actually down there. I don't know if Cajun Navy is down there. I would assume they are, given the water rescues and things like that, but I have not heard. They are not looking for volunteers anymore because they're overwhelmed with people. And this is coming from the Kerr County Sheriff. They have too many people, and it just ends up creating gridlock and stuff. So, as was the case in the London and Somerset tornadoes that hit here a while back, the primary mission goes to recovery, or rescue, then recovery, rescue for the living, recovery of the remains, and then the kind of the cleanup process begins. And before anybody does stuff with their houses and whatnot, generally you're going to have your insurance folks, adjusters, inspectors will come out, take the documentation, or as the homeowners, you guys go out and document all of the damages, anything that you can capture before, during, and after the flood will help your insurance case tremendously. Now, some houses were completely removed from their foundations. I'm not talking about those cases, but mostly the ones where you have water damage, and it is prolific water. And as most of you guys know, I mean, water getting into your drywall, water getting into your insulation, water getting into the wood, sets the stage for black mold and all kinds of other issues that can be deadly down the road. So, oh, sorry about that. I was trying to scroll down here and take this comment off. But yeah, Troy Brewer, check him out. He's a great ministry. In fact, he's got a lot of different ministries rolled up in his main one. But if you can give him support financially, or just keep his ministry in your prayers, just lift those guys up as they're going down there and helping the people that are providing the volunteers, the searchers, all those, and taking care of those folks and making sure that they have the energy and the strength and the water and the everything else to keep going. So, anyways, these disasters are multifaceted. I mean, this recovery here is going to take years, just for the infrastructure. Obviously, the pain and the loss from the children and the adults that were struck, in the wee hours of the morning, just, that's going to be felt for the rest of our lives. Um, every loss of life is a tragedy. Man, it just, it breaks all of our hearts. I know collectively to see the level of damage. And that's, I guess, kind of what tonight's about. You know, it's kind of what this channel is about. Not just the approaching midnight, but the Rep 310. It's about waking people up to the dangers of where we are in the last days. And I know you guys have heard this phrase a lot, weather aware. If you're going on a trip, you want to check the weather of, when you're leaving, the route there. You want to check the weather to the place you're getting to. But obviously, things can change overnight. And in the case of this storm, I mean, this is the remnants of the tropical storm Barry that just, did some damage in Mexico, but kind of fizzled out over Texas, and it just added all that extra moisture and the conditions to getting these super soaker rainstorms that just, I mean, they had seen the rise of water uh, go up to like 29 feet in anywhere from an hour to 3 hours. That's insane. And it happened in the middle of the night. And it was not something that, it wasn't like an approaching hurricane, category 4 or whatever, and people would have kind of had that on the top of their mind. This was the remnants of a tropical storm that didn't even hit the US, it hit Mexico. Um, so you know, that's the real tragedy in it. And, how many families, I don't even know. I just know that we've done that. We've gone camping, we've been in the RVs along the water, had the kids out playing, and just, the last thing you're thinking about in the middle of the night is this, the storm surging the floodwaters there in the river to, 30 feet. I mean, that's just not something you really can anticipate. And I think I don't know if it was the sheriff or the emergency manager for that county, for Kirk County. He was saying the last time that they'd had floodwaters that high was like 1987. And the reason he had mentioned that was because one of the reporters was asking, well, why weren't the families warned, and why weren't they, why didn't? Obviously, now is not the time to ask those questions. Now is the time to grieve with the families and try and rescue those that are, possibly still alive. And, we'll have these stories coming out of people that miraculously survived this thing. Um, Anyways, the reporter was asking why, they weren't warned ahead of time. And the guy's like, hey, the last time this happened was 1987. And if how it is and how human nature is, the more, if we put this out there too much, or we over, I don't want to say abuse the alert system, you know, boy who cried wolf kind of scenario where people will just stop listening to it. But I don't know. I tend to disagree with him a little bit, because we still have this system set up for tornadoes and for other things. And I know that this will all come out on the wash on the backside, the investigations or whatever. I'm sure there'll be lawsuits that come out of this. And that's kind of the ugly side on the backside. But um yeah, there has to be a better way. And I think there is a better way. I think that I don't know exactly. I was telling a friend of mine earlier today about my idea, and I'm still kind of thinking through all of the how to. I don't want to say too much about it just yet, but I'm thinking through about how to do it. So, anyways, oh yeah. So this is from Kim. So let me say about yesterday. So I had a just kind of an impromptu live stream on Telegram. And so Telegram, you have to catch it live or it doesn't save the recording. And so I was talking, and like and I'm sitting alongside the river, the Ohio River, and there's these benches, or there's benches, and then there's like these swings, like rocking swings or whatever, that you can sit on with like two or three people. And so I was sitting on one, and the weather was, I mean, completely calm and cool, and it was partly cloudy, and it was just like I felt like, man, this is a cool time to do this live stream. So I began to figure out, was trying to do the live stream through Telegram. I mean, like, no kidding, as soon as I got it going and started to film, the sun came out, and it felt like the sun had a magnifying glass on me, and I was just baking me under the sun. It was the weirdest thing. I mean, it went from like 75 and, nice breeze, to just all of a sudden the sun, it was just the sun, and it felt like it was just baking me, right? So I'm holding my phone like this, my case is black. And the next bench over, which was, I don't know, 10 or 15 feet, was this, I don't know, this kid just showed up out of nowhere, the spawn of Satan. And he just got to yelling and yelling and yelling. And he was saying the same thing like over and over, like mom or dad or something. He was yelling for his family. And they were right kind of like, I don't know, 15, 20 feet behind him. There was a bunch of tents set up where people were selling, the vendors were selling stuff. And for like 15 or 20 minutes, he just was constantly yelling. And then the minute that I decide to, I just can't take it anymore, my phone first shuts off because the phone now is overheated. And I have not had that happen. Like, I don't know, it just said phone overheated. And so it locked up completely. I had no way to manipulate anything. I couldn't turn it on, off, whatever. The only thing it gave me was like an emergency. And I don't know if that was I click it and it dials 911, or if I click it and it lets me use it even though it's in a kind of a hot state or whatever. I wasn't totally sure. And so then I went ahead and I just said, "All right, man, I'm leaving." It felt like as soon as I decided to do this update, Satan just swarmed on me, and everything that could go wrong went wrong. So I put my phone in my pocket. I have no idea if it's live streaming or not. I can't do anything with it. And I just start walking back to the car, and I'm parked, I don't know, uh, 1,000 feet or so from where I was at before. So it was a bit of a walk. And I get in the car, and then the phone's cooled off at that point. So then I I look at it, and it's like it's still the video's still going, but then it was blue. And before, the little microphone icon had been green. And I know that if I'm gonna like mute it or turn it off, it goes to red. So I thought blue was like good. So I'm sitting there talking for like 15 minutes, explaining all this stuff. And then finally, I think it was Lisa gets on, is like, or somebody jumped on and was like, "Hey, you're muted." Oh, I was like, "Oh, this is the perfect day. This is like the perfect." I mean, everything went wrong. So, anyways, just it was a day. It was a day for sure. Well, I was looking up to see if this storm had any kind of prophetic correlations to what's going on in Texas and the whole telephone pole thing in Las Vegas, and then just the flooding in San Antonio earlier in the month, and then I mean, just it just seems like it's been nonstop. And it's been nonstop ever since Steve Witkoff has been trying to broker and maybe it's more than him. Maybe it's Jared Kushner or some other folks working behind. Something's going on, and I feel like God's just moving His hand from a blessing from the nation, and obviously, if you guys know Bill Koenig, he did the Eye to Eye book. Just Vicky, yeah, absolutely, on the flooding in Appalachia. But Bill Koenig did the Eye to Eye book a while. I don't know how long ago it was, 20 years or so. But he updates it and stuff. And I don't know if there's any uh, deals going on behind the scenes that's not been made public yet, or something like that. But it feels like the hand is being removed. And I know people will say the hand's all the way removed. No, it's not all the way removed yet. It's being removed from the nation, and I feel like we're trying to force Israel into something that is, that is not um, in their best interest. And I don't know. Maybe it feels like that. Maybe I'm reading into it a little bit too much. I don't know. But okay, so I'm talking next week in next Sunday in Winchester, Kentucky. And my sermon is going to be on the best is yet to come, and it's dealing with a lot of these topics of like what happens. So I'm going to do just a very brief one over the world of what's going on in the world right now, but really I wanted to focus on. I guess you guys are getting a preview of that tonight, but yeah, what happens to the believer and what happens to the unbeliever the minute they die, and then walking through that from that point to final judgment, to the to final state into eternity. eternity future. And in my making of this, presentation, I came across Dr. John. I think he's a Dr. John Burke, but he's a researcher, and he's the guy that I had posted those videos on Telegram about people that have had near-death experiences. So I don't know if you guys have got to watch that or not. Absolutely fascinating. I love this topic, and I fell in love with this topic years ago when my friend Chris Putnam, who's passed, I think he passed back in 2015 or 2016, young. I mean, he's my age. He was 51 when he passed. I think he had a brain aneurysm or something like that. But just a crazy, crazy smart guy. I mean, he wrote, co-wrote, I think a couple of books, but I know one of the books he co-wrote was Petrus Romanus with Tom Horn. And I mean, Chris Putnam and I were at the time brothers in arms, and Facebook. We were battling a bunch of heretics together, and so we would DM each other all the time and talk and about whatever the drama was going on. And I just he was a cool guy, man, and I got to meet him once, and just a man. But his book that he had, which I highly recommend, it's called The Supernatural Worldview, and it's like that thick. I mean, it's a thick book, and he takes the most documented um, what we would call near death experiences or out of body experiences, and just did a phenomenal study on that. Well, John Burke does something very similar, and he basically interviews people on every continent, from every religion, from all walks of life and all backgrounds. In fact, a lot of the people that were the most verifiable ones were the people that had the most to lose if they came out and talked about this stuff. um, CEOs, airline pilots, like commercial airline pilots, doctors, people that were, serious professionals in their lives. Um, and I want to share a couple of those stories because I found them to be fascinating. But in the contrast between the heaven and the hell one, I wanted to see what was the comparisons and where did they compare, where did they contrast across all of these studies that he did. And there's some generalities that I think in talking about tonight will hopefully clear it up for you, because it cleared it up for me. And I think given the fact that he's dedicated 35 years to the subject, and he's really heavily invested in understanding this process. It's a phenomena that happens, and it happens. I mean, I wanted to say one of the percentages that he says that he is given. It's something to the effect of like 1 out of every 10 people have this kind of experience, and that sounds crazy high. That sounds like like we should all know people that have had these kinds of experiences. Well, I know somebody, Terry James. And there's other people that we've all met, or people that are in our circles that somebody's died and been resuscitated for the most part. But anyways, I wanted to go through the comparison contrast on these. Um, but before I do, just let me just tie this together with the flooding and all that. If I think it's incumbent upon us as adults to be weather aware, whether you're a housewife, a truck driver, a businessman, whatever. Obviously, weather impacts everything we do. And I've just got now fireworks are going off behind me. But we need to have that awareness. I always talk about either being left of bang, being aware of your surroundings. That also ties in with the weather. I mean, I know going into camping and glamping and all that kind of stuff, like you generally look to see, okay, is it going to be raining that week, or is it going to be sunny? What's the general temperatures? That's really kind of the extent we look at it. But staying weatherware is also keeping up. And I don't know, I mean, there's various apps or whatever, wherever you live, I'm sure there's notifications you guys can get. But man, being kind of hyper vigilant, because it's only going to get worse from here. it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse, and it's going to get worse, and it's going to keep getting worse. That's what happens in birth pains. They don't get better and better. They get worse and worse, right? Until the eventual delivery. And this is part of the birth pains that Jesus spoke about and that Paul talks about living in the last days, that we are going to be it's not going to let up. And I need you guys in the 310 tribe. You all have families, you got places you go to, vacations, trips, whatever. You guys just need to be hyper vigilant on that. Conversely, I need you guys to be spiritually aware. And I'm preaching to the choir here, but like, it just as suddenly as some of these um, natural disasters can spring up on us. I mean, you've got things that kind of come out of nowhere in the spiritual domain that catch people off guard, and they catch the church off guard. And so I want to talk a couple. When the reason I wanted to talk about NDEs because um, there's been a lot of stuff in the past that have come out. There's a guy, Bill Weiss, who claims to have spent some time in hell. There's that 90 minutes in heaven. I mean, there's a lot of these stories, and most of us don't really know what to make of it, because you'll hear a story about an atheist or a Muslim or Buddhist or somebody that's not of the Christian faith that may have some type of positive experience. And you're thinking, well, that doesn't sound right, because they should be waking up and, as soon as they're coming out of their body, they should be smelling, sulfur and things. It should be an ominous feeling. And so I want to talk about this, and because I think that this is one of those little key areas that I love to focus in on, and that's the transition point, from one place to another. And okay, so here are some of the commonalities. The people, when they leave their body, when they stop having a heartbeat and they stop having brain function. This is the most common response. I think this is amongst 1,200 people, again, from all backgrounds, that share these same commonalities. So one is there is awareness of a spiritual uh, form, but they're still in their bodies, and that kind of coalesces with number two, which is this heightened senses. So right now we are ruled in a sense by five senses. What we see, smell, taste, touch, and feel. Um, hopefully I said that right. Taste, touch, smell, feel, see. Okay, yeah. So those five, and that's that all that information. Like, I'm looking at the camera screen right now on the computer. You're looking at your laptop, and the image that is coming back to your eye is inverted, and then your mind is processing it, and then the nerve systems are taking that data and putting it through your brain. And anyways, I don't know how all that works, but it's giving you information. So your eye gate is allowing you to see. And if you're not listening, maybe you're not seeing, but maybe you're just listening and you're doing other things like driving or whatever. Then your ear gate is how you're hearing me, right? And so every sound and everything that you see is being converted into information that is then being processed through your brain. And that's through five senses. These people, when they go and they get into this state where they're outside of their body, the only way that they can even kind of explain it is to say it's like having 50 senses. So going from five senses to 50 senses, you can imagine how much more alive you're going to feel the minute you step out of your body, your physical corporal body, into your spiritual form. Now, in the spiritual form, and um, I know there might be some disagreements on this, but when Paul talks about it and Peter talks about it, Paul and Peter both refer to this body kind of, I think they both refer to it. I know Paul does for sure, but like a tent. This is like a tent. It's flimsy. It's a temporary body that is sown in corruption, right? We inherit the sin nature. The sin nature has a physical impacts on our body. We age. We generally only live to between 70 to 80 something years on average. People die a lot younger, some people die older, but the average is 70 to 80 years, right? And this body is, even though it's a tent, it's still called a body. It's still something that we inhabit. Being outside of the body, when Paul says to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord, I think it's in First or Second Corinthians 7. But he's talking about us being naked, right? To be without a body. You still have this spiritual form that is way more alive than this is. This body really kind of restricts the real you. Um, but you don't have your glorified body yet, right? So there is a body that we will get beyond that spirit form. And that's what happens at the rapture of the church. There is a resurrection of the dead. So the dead come with Christ from heaven in their spirit form that Paul referred to as being naked, but in our sense it would be like more alive than ever, and they are married up with their glorified bodies. And I don't know how that works necessarily, but they are going to get their glorified bodies first. And those of us who are alive and remain, who are alive when this actually happens, we aren't going to be resurrected. We're going to be translated like Enoch was, from mortal to immortal, from corruptible to incorruptible. And all that happens in the blink of an eye, right? Okay, so there are different states of our being, is what I'm trying to get to. And this is what John is referring back to in terms of these experiences these people have. Another one, number three, is the out of body experience, but they're observing the physical world. So at a certain point, whether they're laying in the back of an ambulance like Terry was, or in a hospital room, or wherever they have died, there was a continuation of life. It's not like everything goes black and then there's a long period of black darkness and you don't have like non sentience or whatever, and then you wake up and there's a thing. No, it's like you go from this body, this moment of being alive, to staying alive but being in your spirit body. And that's the that continuation aspect of death. It's not a drop off and then it's like turning the TV off or anything and then it's just dark for a while. No, it's straight on. It doesn't stop. But you're able to observe the physical world, and generally how this is manifested is these people come out of their bodies. And at a certain point, they turn around or look and they see their body still lying there. And then the light bulb goes off and it's like, oh, I think I'm dead, you know? Um, okay, so the next one is a travel through a tunnel or a light pathway. And this is the one that used to get me because I'm thinking like, well, how, if somebody's an atheist, are they going to see light at the end of the tunnel? And so the way that John likens it is that it seems to be, per everybody's uh, these people that came back from being out of their body and being disconnected from their physical form, they all explained that there was some kind of a boundary that separated where they were from where they were going to go. And once, if they were on this side of the boundary, there was still that time for that redemption, but they knew, it's like something they knew in their bones, in their DNA, that if they had crossed that boundary, there was no coming back from it, good or bad. Either the good, positive heaven or the bad, like hellish experience. And the reason that John likened it to, maybe giving some type of an explanation as to why it looks as like a tunnel. If we think about what the Bible says about Satan, his domain is not in the shadowy, cavernous underworld. It's in the sky above us. Paul says that he's the prince of the power of the air. And when we look at all of these satanic places and Luciferian places that are very occultic and whatnot, they generally tend to be the high places. And so I think that these tunnels are like or John Burke explains it, that these tunnels are like safe passageways through the enemy territory. And I liken the rapture, like, why does the rapture take place in the sky? I've asked this question a long time ago. And I think it's because it's right in the middle of enemy territory. And it's going to be like this military procession where we get paraded through enemy territory as the prize. We are the prize. And so I think there's some truth to that. I don't know. I'm not 100% on it, on John Burke's tunnel theory, but it kind of makes sense to me, because you're stepping out of the physical domain into the spiritual domain, of which there is vast numbers of demonic entities and fallen angels and whatnot. It seems that these tunnels maybe serve as like a protected passageway or something. I don't know. The next one is the encounter with brilliant or mystical light or beings. Okay, so this one was interesting to me. Yeah. So I'll give a couple of different examples. One of them was a Hindu guy, and I forget his background, but he dies, and he essentially meets. I think he either met Jesus or he met an angel, and I have to go back and listen to the thing again. But he knew, like he knew. I think he knew who this guy was, and he knew it was Jesus. And he gets saved later on when he, goes with his daughter to some. She got invited to some kind of choral, choral presentation where the choir was going to sing or something. And she got invited to this church to sing in this thing, and he goes and listens, and the pastor preaches on Jesus being the gate, being the. Anyways, the guy connected that with that. He's like, "Oh man, that was Jesus," and then he got saved. And then the second instance was this lady that was blind. That she was blind from birth, and if you know anything about blind folks, and I used to work, and it was like a summer job back in college. I drove for the School of the Blind in Austin, and we used to drive the kids home on the weekends to go be with their parents, and we'd drop them off on Friday, pick them up on Sunday. And we did that every weekend, and so I got to know a little bit more about blind people and the disability that it presents for people. So if you're not born blind, if you had your eyesight, and then at some point beyond childhood or whatever, um, you were able, even if you lose your sight, you're still able to visualize things in your head, like what a tiger looks like, or what a car looks like, or what the color blue looks like, or red, etc., etc. Your mind, as a baby, you're looking at things, right? That's really your main avenue of getting information. You begin to recognize faces like mommy and daddy, and maybe a sister, or the pet, or grandmother, grandfather, um, and that all those images that they're seeing through their eyes, through the eyes of a baby or child or whatever, is then helping them form pictures, and it's creating like this Rolodex in their mind of what things are, and they begin to correlate things with images. This picture, this face is my mommy's face, or this face is my daddy's face, or this image is a ball, or this image is food, or whatever. And but if you're born blind, you never have that part of your brain never develops, and you have no way to um you have nothing to relate it to. You don't even know what blue is. And so there was a woman that was born blind, and she dies as a teenager in a car accident. And after the whole experience, and she comes back and she's able to describe meeting Jesus. And obviously she's never seen him. She doesn't even know how to describe him. But in the description that she gives, it is what we commonly think of as, we saw a picture, hanging on the wall or something. We know that that's not really Jesus because they didn't have cameras then. But we have a general understanding. I mean, it's a very recognizable, kind of iconic picture of Jesus. And anyways, she was able to describe him. Um, and this is a woman again that's never seen anything. So, I mean, there's just some amazing stories where this happens, and you know, anyways, supernatural world exists, but a lot of these folks, let me see if this is captured on here. Okay, um, they have escorts. The minute that you die, your guardian angel was there, and there was another angel, and this is the one that records your life, good, bad, whatever. And generally, so you have these escorts as soon as they came out or realize they're dead or in their spirit form. When it's the positive experience, there were angels, and the general description of these angels was that they're about 10 or 12 feet tall. I mean, they're big, and they're very majestic looking and very regal, and just if we were to see them, we would just be like, fall over because it would be too much. But thinking about that, and then thinking about the form that Jesus chose to take, that he was without, he was just like an average looking guy. He didn't choose to make himself look, you know, 20 feet tall and, made out of this, shiny diamonds or something. He just chose to come in the form of an average man. So, okay. Number 6, recognition of loved ones and divine beings. So sometimes there was a welcoming committee, and it was people that they knew, that their loved ones who had passed on, family members, like a grandparents or maybe a spouse, children, etc. And it was people that they was special to them in their lives. And it was sometimes the people that you wouldn't think it was. And so for some of the cases, not the overwhelming ones, but there were some cases in there where it was their pet. And this was like the creature that was the closest to them in their whole life. So it was the person that held that most special place to them. And okay, let me keep going. Altered time of space, altered perception of space and time. They didn't have all of them almost universally said that the minute they realized they were in this state, they had no idea how long they were in that state. So let's say that they were in the back of an ambulance and they were, uh, um, you know, dead, clinically dead for say 4 minutes. While they were in the outside of their body, they had no way. Time was irrelevant. It could have been 4 months or 4 years for all they knew. They just had no way to measure time in that. So I think one of the overlooked things in Revelation when it talks about, I think it's in Revelation 21, where it talks about the trees would line the river of life, and it would be change for the seasons, for the healing of the nations, etc. Uh, that there's going to be some understanding of time in eternity, but it's not something that we're bound by. And I'll talk more about that in a second. Okay, so the next one was life review. So there's always a panoptic replay of your life and your motives. And I always wondered about this I wondered at the Bema judgment, is that where you do the panoptic life review? But it seems like the panoptic life review is at the moment of your passing, and it is your life. And sometimes it's the things in your life that you like. For example, in the case that he gives, one of the I think he was a businessman, CEO or whatever. The things that reviewed in his life weren't like the big moments in his life where he was like, getting the awards, or if these were those moments where he was rude to somebody, or he was having evil thoughts towards somebody while he was pretending to be nice, or he's being duplicitous, or it was all those kind of moments. And I can certainly see that if we step outside of time and time becomes irrelevant, each one of us can all have our own panoptic life review with God, and He's going to know us better than we know ourselves. He's going to know the motivations, and He's going to get at the heart of everything. I think that could all happen simultaneously in what we would be in, like, in time. It may be even imperceptible. It could be like a second, and it's boom, your whole life is reviewed. And while you're there with God, it could feel like, you know, decades. I don't know. I mean, there's no concept of time there, right? So there is time to do all that individually for everybody, and still, in regards to this time, it won't take up any time. So that also kind of thinks, it leads me back to the idea of where John is caught up to the future in Revelation and is shown the things in the future. I think he's really caught forward into the future, and again, because he's stepping out of time into eternity, it's almost irrelevant. And one of the things that, I don't know if it was him or somebody else I was listening to, I think it was him, talking about prayer. If God is eternal, and He is, and if God is omnipotent, He is, and omniscient, He is, and omnipresent, He is, then our prayers are also without time. I don't want to say eternal, but they're without time, because if God exists outside of time and I'm giving Him this prayer message right now, and I say, God, please, blah, 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 He's already seen that from the beginning, before the world was even created. You know what I mean? So then that prayer, that request, can be worked retroactively back in time, working its way forward to the moment that you actually pray. Does that make sense to everybody? I don't know. Maybe I'm just like thinking uh, too much into this, but it's fascinating to me, and it's the idea. We think so little of prayer, but the fact that our prayers actually go before us, before time even began. It's I don't know. It's fascinating to think about, and we'll understand that once we get there. The next thing is, a sense of unconditional love and communication, heart to heart. So when these people have this interaction with God, um, there's two different things going on at the same time. One is that they are overwhelmed by who He is and immediately fall prostrate before Him. On top of that, though, is this overwhelming sense of love from God, because there is a sense of conviction in recognizing who we are before a holy and righteous God. But at the same time, it's that love, that just deep, powerful love, like that you have for your child. And that's how He's looking at us, like one of His creations. We are. And we're special and unique to Him. There's only one of me. There's only one of you ever made, ever. I mean, you're as unique as each of these individual little, as the stars in the cosmos, or a snowflake, and how they're all different, or a blade of grass or a flower. There's differences in those things, and that's what makes us unique. So, but that, I think, is where God gets to the heart of what it is that we do. And when we think about the bema judgment as believers, we know we're not judged for our sins, because those are paid for at the cross. But what did we do with the life that we had once we were born again? Did we use those gifts for His glory and His purposes, or did we do those things for ulterior motives? And that's something we're all going to have to square with God. You know, that's part of the judgment process, and the refining process for us, where The wood, hay, and stubble is burned away, and all that's left is the precious metals, gold and silver and diamonds and precious stones. How's everybody doing? There's a little bit of delay here, so I'm trying to catch up on the chat. So I believe this is in Revelation 7. Let's see here. Maybe 14, 6 or 14. Mm, No, that's the wrong smoke. Let me check 6. That smoke is the smoke of those being tormented. Yeah, that's not the right smoke. Oh my gosh. I get this up. I can't read it that way. It is now going to drive me crazy. Let's see. So we're doing those ones. It is in. There it is. Revelation 8. Another angel having a golden censer came and stood at the altar. He was given much incense that he should offer it with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints ascended before God from the angel's hand. Then the angel took the censer and filled it with the fire from the altar and threw it to the earth, and there were noises, thunderings, lightnings, and earthquakes. So the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound. Okay, sorry about that. That was a good question, Nicolette. Thank you. Okay, let's see. Okay, we left off in number 10. So beauty, uh, they all, when it comes to the heavenly side of it, just were blown away at the beauty of things, but it was things that were um, natural for us to see, like trees and hills and grass and things that are it wasn't some new like completely foreign science fiction like reality or something like that. No, it was things that we were used to and able to comprehend. And it also wasn't like we were all sitting on white clouds. There was colors everywhere. And there was colors that people that have come back from these have tried to replicate and could not. That there wasn't a way to make the colors that they saw. They didn't even have any way. It'd be like a blind person born blind trying to explain colors. It's exactly the same way. They saw colors there that they couldn't even. And it wasn't that they could just see the colors; they could smell them, they could hear them. Trees, everything was living. The water was living. Everything was alive. It's crazy. And then the next one was the boundary that we talked about earlier. That there was some type of a boundary that once they crossed it, they knew that that was where they were going to be. So obviously, in the hellish experiences, which I think that constitutes about 25% of the experiences, they knew there was a boundary. And then in the hellish experiences, in terms of like the escorts, the only one that I remember was one of the guys saying that he had died in the hospital and he woke up out of his body, and there was people that looked like they worked at the hospital were telling him he needed to come with them. Sorry about that. And so I had the actual live stream, I think, behind this video. uh, so they had these people that were like they looked human, and then the closer they got to the boundary, the more their face began to change, and then they became meaner and more evil, more wicked. And I like it. It reminds me of I don't know if anybody's seen this movie. It came out a long time ago. Jacob's Ladder, and in that movie, I can't remember if it was whatever Tim whatever his name is, the real tall guy, Timothy Robbins. He's I can't remember the gist of the story, but like when he was looking, he'd be in a crowd of people or a party. He'd catch somebody's eye for a second, and their face would change a little bit, and you would see like like a snake eyes or some kind of like reptilian. You could tell they weren't human; they were demonic or something. And as they got closer to this boundary, these things became more and more like that, and they were trying to drag this guy to this boundary, and I think he had cried out to Jesus at this point. But anyways, okay, next one was the reluctant return. So those that had the heavenly type experience, the overwhelming sense from those people was they did not want to come back because it was so beautiful, and they were so much more alive, and were not in pain. They'll say that they had died from some type of injury and they were in a tremendous amount of pain. They didn't feel that in this body, and so between that, being more alive than anything, the reunion with their loved ones, the beauty, I mean, they just did not want to come back. And a lot of these folks that do come back end up going through a bit of depression because of the how amazing it was. And it reminds me of what Paul says, eye has not seen nor ears heard, the things that God is. And then in later in 2 Corinthians 12, where he's trying to explain it wasn't lawful for him to describe. He doesn't even have the words to describe it. And Paul was the most eloquent writer that we have in the Bible. Well, John is given that revelation later, and he does describe the things that he's shown to describe for us. And that's why it seems so fantastical, and that's why so much of the Western Christianity just dismiss it out of hand. It's like, oh, it's not real. It's symbolic, or it's flowery language, or it's apocalyptic literature, and blah blah blah. And they completely downplay it. But that's our reality. That is the reality that is coming. That reality is more real than this reality. This reality is temporary. It's going away. It's changing. It's going to get renovated by fire. But that eternal realm is forever. That's like the real, as the kids say now, the real reals. And then there was some additional ones here, but there were less across the board. Um, People reported a heightened peace, or they were healed of whatever their ailments were. Special knowledge, and this was interesting because they knew things that they shouldn't know, and they know that they shouldn't know. Like um, questions they might have had about whatever. They just said that they knew. They just intuitively knew. Terry James, I mentioned this several times, but in his experience, he saw this young woman coming toward him in her 20s, beautiful, um, alive, and he instantly knew who she was, and she knew who he was. And so Terry, this was his old Sunday school director. So this, I think Terry had his heart attacks I think he was in his 70s, early 70s or whatever. And this Sunday school teacher, from my understanding, she was an older woman, I think 60s or 70s when Terry was a boy. So he has not seen her in 50 plus years. And the last time he saw her, she was an elderly woman, a seasoned woman. And but he knew instantly who she was. And that's what I mean. You just know things. Um, Animals in heaven, numerous reports of people seeing animals in heaven, all kinds of animals, cats, dogs, horses. There was animals that they saw. They didn't even know what they were. They had never seen them before. Um, and even the people that there was a Christian guy. He was a an airline pilot, and he was a Christian when he I think he was in a plane crash or whatever. And he said he was surprised to see animals there because he did not come from that background. He did not think that there would be there. Animals would be there. And so that the whole if you get a chance to watch the video on our pets in heaven, that is one of the best presentations on the subject I've seen, or treatments of the subject. And I think I 100% agree. And the pets, though, what was fascinating about this is something that we've long theorized on, going back to Adam and Eve, and like the snake and all that kind of stuff. I guess somebody had asked, one of the most common questions is, can your pets talk? And one person said that yes, and another person said no. So there's no real yes or no. But the one thing that was clear was that they understood you perfectly. So when you talk to your dog and said, "Hey, Fido, let's go for a walk down to the lake and let's go get some fish or whatever," he would know that just as clearly as if I said it to you, or as I just said it right now. You would understand that. And these animals, apparently, they have that that barrier is not there anymore. That was removed between man and animal. Or that was put in place there by God after the flood. And I think that's what it is. I think prior to the flood, people could communicate with animals in a way that we can't today. And that would go all the way back to Adam, where Adam was able to name the animals, and he was given dominion over the animals, and they knew their place. He knew his place, and there was some type of perfect harmony in all this. Well, then obviously Satan comes, and Satan is now possessing the form of the serpent, who was able to communicate with Eve in a way that was totally natural for them at that time. And I think that was all kind of mental, being able to talk to each other. Obviously, snakes don't have vocal cords and all that. And maybe they did in that first iteration of it. And I don't know, but I'm thinking they probably had some type of telepathic communication, that they were able to talk to each other in a way that that was lost in the garden, or after the garden. Okay. And then I think that was it. So I think I caught one question in here. Somebody asked, "Do I believe all this stuff?" Well, here's what I believe, and this is why I think what his work is important. Um, so it answers some questions as to why people, whether they're atheist or not Christian, seem to have a positive experience, and why people that are atheist and even some Christians have had some type of a hellish experience. I think, and this is John Burke's theory on this, is that God is giving certain people a foretaste of what their future is going to be, or what their future could be, or even just showing them, hey, this reality is real. This is not some kind of joke. This is like where you're going to go the minute you stop breathing air. And so there was a some of it is for warnings. Some of it is purely out of God's grace. Some of it is that there's a purpose that those people would serve in coming back. The guy that's a Muslim, the guy that's a Hindu goes back into his communities. Clearly, if everybody saw him die or know that he died and now he's back from the dead and he's saying Jesus is real, I mean, how powerful a testimony is that? Especially in places where there aren't mission fields, or there isn't a mission church, or there isn't any real good way for for Christians to get in there to evangelize. So I think that again, I hold to the belief that God is long suffering, that none perish. And if somebody cries out to him at the moment of their death, even if it's a thought that they're thinking, I think I tend to agree that if there is some type of a boundary, that if they were to go beyond that, it was too late. And there's a guy, Sean Weed, who did a video. He was a Marine, and I've talked about this before too, but you can look up Sean Weed, Shawn, and his death experience, where he died and he was outside of his body, and he had this experience with this demon and this angel, and just the emotional, I mean you can see it and hear it and feel it in his voice when he's talking of how real this was. And it's a very, very powerful testament, very long. It's like an hour and a half, I think, but it's well worth the listen. So yeah, I tend to think that God allows things like this to happen to, um, maybe as a warning to somebody if they were destined to go to hell because they lived, whatever life, and God gives them this last chance. And that may be the answer to a prayer that a grandmother may have had for him or her 50 years earlier. And again, remember, prayer is outside of time. So the minute that that prayer leaves your mouth or leaves your mind to the throne room of God, it's stepping out of time into eternity, right? So now time is, God sees everything at the same time. So, our prayers are way more powerful than anything than we can even fathom in this reality right now. So I do think that there's purpose why these things happen, and there's reasons, and I think those reasons probably vary from place to place and from time to time. But what isn't, well, I guess what isn't debatable is that regardless of whether that person was an atheist or whether that person was a Muslim or that person was a Hindu or whoever, they become believers in Jesus Christ. And because when they're stepping into that reality, stepping out of this body into the next, they are experiencing that, hey, this life isn't all there is. There is something beyond this. And then they intuitively, remember, just kind of knowing those things intuitively, they begin to intuitively know, oh man, I'm doomed. There's a sense of foreboding for those that are dying without Christ. There's this sense of it. And the instances where some of those people were shown the heavenly experience um, that wasn't Christians. There was a Hindu guy, or he was either Hindu or Muslim, and he's shown heaven, like he's seeing it, and he's describing, like Revelation, the New Jerusalem coming down. He's describing all of it, the foundations, all of that, and he's never read the Bible ever. He's describing it, and he's seeing that there's a narrow gate to get into it. Then he's looking over here, and there's like this abyss, dark and evil, and he knows that that's where he's going to go, and he can't get into this place, but this is the place that he wants to get into. And so as he comes back, and as he's trying to um uh pull all of this together, that's where his daughter gets invited to the school to sing, and hears the passage out of Matthew 7 from the pastor, and the pastor's talking about the narrow gate, and it all clicks for him, and that's when he gets saved. So this is in the US. He's Muslim. He was raised Muslim. His family's Muslim or Hindu, and they had gotten invited to this thing, and then so he has the death experience, and then later he has the experience with his daughter in the church and hearing all that. That's where this all connects for him. But I do think that God does allow for that to happen. So the one of the things that I feel like there's probably the most debate on is the I think John Burke was interviewed by like Glenn Beck, right? And so the debate is, well, how can a guy that's following a false gospel, and let's say that he's Mormon or he's, Jehovah Witness, or he's, some faith that is way outside the norms of like traditional Orthodox Christianity, and could they experience this kind of peace and this kind of whatever and walk away from that thinking that they're still all right? Kind of like what Pope Francis had been promoting, that that atheists go to heaven, or that everybody goes to heaven, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't see it as that way. I think that in these instances where they have a positive experience, either they're not being completely honest on what they're seeing or talking about, um, or they weren't shown like a full thing, or somehow they were brought back early, or I don't know. I mean, any of those cases would be could be suspect, I guess, if you were, because it doesn't seem like they could experience a true clinical death. And I guess we would have to differentiate between those that are verifiably died and those who have had some type of traumatic near death experience where they don't clinically die, but their brain goes into some kind of state. The ones that John is talking about here, some of these people have been dead for like 30 minutes, some dead for an hour and a half, like no heartbeat, no brain activity, nothing. Like they are dead, dead. And again, you know, the minute their body and their soul separates, their soul is not in time anymore. So, the whole crossing the boundary, and people have these kind of different experiences, and they don't have any way to relate to time, so they don't know how long they're there. Anyway, so that's the debate, and whether or not people have the ability. I always thought, and I don't remember if somebody in the chat maybe thinks of this movie, but there was a movie that came out in the 70s, and they had played it in churches all over the U.S. about it was kind of like somebody that dies and goes to hell, and he was in a motorcycle accident, and so his body is. So he's driving the motorcycle, is going down the road, gets in the motorcycle accident, and then his body's just laying there, and then it's nighttime, and then he wakes up, and so this is 70s, uh, uh, special effects. The guy just gets up. It's not like I don't think there was like uh, they didn't have the technology to superimpose some type of spirit body on him or whatever. Anyways, if anybody could think of that movie, gosh, I wish I could remember what it was, but it scared the crap out of me. Excuse my language. I mean, I was terrified for months and months and months after seeing that movie. And they played it like all the time. I don't even remember. It must have been in the early, and it was in the early 80s. So maybe it was A Thief in the Night or something. It was something where a guy crashed on a motorcycle, and he's got these like giant demons like taking him to hell. Anyways, so if anybody could think of what that movie was, it's killing me to figure out what it was. Let's do some question and answer, and then I am going to call it a night. It's 10:17. Oh, next Friday, or next Saturday, I'll be on. I'll have Mark Vickers on with me, and we're going to do a little bit earlier because I am speaking in Winchester that next day. So I'll need to get to bed early that night and get up like super early the next day and drive to the place. So Paul says Skull Rider. Nope. No, it was like a Christian movie. Um, And the Christian movies are going to be like a lower production quality generally because they don't have the budgets to do what the big studios do. But it was a Christian movie. But it was all I remember from it was the guy crashing on his motorcycle and he's getting taken to hell by these giant demons. And these guys are, looking at it now, it looks kind of cheesy. It's kind of like watching the old 70s and 80s shows like Land of the Lost and all those kind of movies. It's pretty bad. Let me see here. Let me get to the questions. Okay. Watch it for Jesus question. Finally, people in Europe are waking up and speaking up to the propaganda, but is it too late to turn things around regarding mass immigration? So this is kind of a hard one. And the reason it's hard is because we're in this weird, really weird place right now in the world. We've had some massive military actions take place, primarily between Israel, her surrounding threats, these proxy terrorist groups like Hamas, the Houthis, the Hezbollah, um, and various terrorist factions inside of Judea and Samaria, as well as taking on Iran. So, in one sense, there has been a tremendous amount of violence, but it's resulted in the decimation of these organizations and the real, I would say, prospect for Middle East peace in the first time in 40, 50 years, really since the Iranian Revolution. And at the same time the Iranian had their revolution, the Salafids, I think it's the Salafid version of Sunni Islam, which is the most militant, extreme version of Sunniism, or Sunni Shia, Sunni Islam. Um, they had that same revolution in Saudi Arabia in '79, and most people don't realize that. So both the Sunni and the Shia went really, really extreme in '79, and the idea of Middle East peace at that point, where it could fulfill um, the prerequisite in Ezekiel 38 of Israel dwelling um, safely and securely, without walls, that couldn't happen. That couldn't happen for the last 4 decades. And now, with the decapitation strikes that the IDF, the IA, the Mossad, Shin Bet, all these different groups have done against these different agencies, those groups are dead. Like they're dead, dead. Will there still be people inside of those groups that still harbor this hatred towards Israel, et cetera, et cetera? Yes. Um, so um, they do still exist, and they're going to regroup into what eventually will come the Gog and Magog coalition. And I think with regards to Europe, and I've said this numerous times, is that I see Europe really being drained a lot of really of their worst of their worst of their militant military aged males that they have there. And I think that they're going to look at this as like a crusade, and they're going to look at the time is right. We're going to strike Israel, and it'll be right after the rapture, I think. And the world would be in a bit of chaos, a state of chaos, and they're going to look at this as an opportunity, maybe the first and only shot that they've had in 70 plus years to take Israel out. And so I I think that that problem basically solves the Muslim question for Europe right there. Now there'll still be Muslims in Europe, but they're not going to be anything like it is now. I mean, the militancy is going to be removed out of there once the bulk of the men are gone. Okay. Tristan says, "Bro, peak on himself a mustache." I'm just trying to sing out. I don't know how. I don't. It's weird. It is so weird to have this on my face. This is the longest it's ever been. And I think I was walking around last night at the festival down by the river, and it felt like something was on my face, like, but it was just my hair, like the wind catching it is driving me insane. So I think I have to let it grow like down to like here, where like Sam Elliott and some of those old cowboys, they have this super long mustaches. I just have to grow it out like that long. I don't know. My daughters hate it. They think it makes me look old. I don't know. What do you guys think? Does it make me look old, or shave it, or keep it? All right. Abel Garma, Pete, have you seen Bill Weese's 23 Minutes in Hell? I think, yeah. Yeah, that's what I was talking about earlier. Uh, Bill Weiss, his 23 Minutes in Hell, 90 Minutes in Heaven. I mean, there's been a lot of books that have come out as of late in the last 20 years of people having these experiences. And I think that they're Pete Corleone. Well, his handlebar mustache is really the goal I'm going for. But yeah, I don't know, man. I know that people have near death experiences or out of body experiences. I believe that that's a real thing. I think you can have out of body experiences without dying. I mean, people do it with whatever that drug is down in South America that people go down there and trip on. I think Joe Rogan talks about it a lot. I'm not sure. But anyways, that stuff, I mean, there's ways to leave your body. Um, Now, the cases that Don Burke or John Burke looks at, these people were clinically verifiably dead, dead, dead. So Jessica says, go for it. I don't know. It feels so strange. Anyways, okay, this is from Pamela. Hey, Pamela, good to see you. Do you think Netanyahu defies Trump if Trump pushes for a two-state solution when Netanyahu visits? Honestly, what I'm looking for this week, or not this week, this year, is I think that Israel, in whatever way they do it, they end up um, annexing Judea and Samaria, and that just becomes the heart of Israel again. So, regardless of what happens between Trump and I do think that some of Iran has got to be left, and I don't mean the good Iran. I mean like the government, the bad government, because we know that they take part in the Gog Magog coalition. So I'm hoping that during this time period where Israel's been striking Iran, that Christian Iranians have been able to flee and get out of the country. I don't know if anybody has kept up on that or where they are on that, but if they had the opportunity to flee, it to me it seems like that would have been the perfect time when the government is completely in disarray and their leadership's decapitated or they're in hiding or whatever the case is. Like now is the time to leave. So I don't know. They still play a role in Gog and Magog, so I don't think a good government takes over there. But I do think they're weakened to the point where, it's almost irrelevant at this point. They're just going to have to wait. They're licking their wounds. They're waiting. They're regrouping, and then all those groups of people that weren't involved in these conflicts or weren't involved between Russia and Ukraine. I'm talking about all the Soviet satellite states, former Soviet satellite states, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Turkestan, or Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, all of those countries. I mean, there's a massive, massive body of military aged males, Muslims who hate Israel, who would be more than willing to jump on board some kind of massive armada to march against Israel. So they're not involved in any of the fighting right now. So there's still a huge body of people that will march against Israel, as well as in Africa and coming out of Europe. So you got the three different directions. They're coming up from south, northwest, and northeast. So I just think the world they're going to wait for this period of chaos to happen, and then they're going to make their move to attack. But I think Netanyahu. I don't know, man. Here's the thing about those two guys: they've been friends forever. So I mean, they were friends going back in the '90s. So I don't know how this all shakes out between. I don't know. It seems like Netanyahu has a backdoor channel to Trump, just their own personal friendship. over decades, and I don't know how much he's coordinating with him, and how much of that is at odds with what they're trying to do with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner and the two-state solution and the peace treaty with Israel, with Iran, and so on and so forth. So it's a hot mess there right now. From Kathy Lindstrom, in the end days, Earth will have many natural disasters. How do we discern natural disasters from God and the weather that now that is being manipulated? Nice, I like that. I don't know, and honestly, I mean, could we do anything about it either way? You know, if there's some private groups out there that are seeding the sky or doing whatever with the weather, how are we to stop that other than to pray? You know, maybe we could talk about it, be vigilant. We could, maybe report it if things are, but I think we're all in this river. This river is going toward the waterfall, and we're all moving in this general direction. And we can go from bank to bank, but we can't stop it. It's still going to push us forward, no matter how slow we try to make ourselves go. Now, for the Christian, there's an off ramp, right? We get on the lifeboat and get off before the waterfall, but the rest of the world is going to be thrown over that. And it just doesn't seem like there's any good way to stop that. Bubba mustache. Okay, Christ for life. Sorry, 777. Have you heard of Micah Turnbow? And if so, what are your thoughts? He seems genuine, but some questionable things, in my honest opinion. Micah Turnbow. That name sounds very familiar. I Micah Turnbow. How do I know that name? I don't know. I'll get to that in a second. No, not off the top of my head. I can't think, but it does sound very familiar. Micah Turnbow. Christina Reese. Question. I believe everything that has breath has God's spirit. Animals, us. When we die, that spirit goes back to God. Our soul is different from the spirit. Do you think this could be so? So John Burke does address that passage. I think it's from Ecclesiastes, where it talks about the spirit of man goes up and the spirit of animal goes down, but we all have the breath of life in us. So a couple of the points that he makes in there is that in the creation, animals were part of that created order that God called good, and they were intended and designed to be created forever. They were going to live in the Garden of Eden as long as man was going to be in the Garden of Eden. As long as man is going to be alive, they were designed to to be there like we were. In the sense of longevity, and we are made different from animals for sure. Um, we are made in the image of God, and they are not. But we all have this spirit inside of the spirit of life in us, and I think that when we read Romans chapter 8 and it talks about all of creation groans and is waiting for this deliverance from the bondage of sin, man, all of creation includes your pets. All of creation includes animals. All of creation includes trees and fish and other things that live and exist in this reality that we call, or this world that we call reality. And they weren't the cause of the curse. It was man, and we sinned, we rebelled, and why are they punished for our misdeeds if they're not going to be able to live on when God clearly intended to create them to live forever? But we are the ones that messed that up, and yet we're given a second chance. But anyways, I do think that they will be there. That God has given them a spirit of life in them. It is not a soul. It's not the same as what we have. It's different, but that's okay. They're not supposed to be like us. And I love somebody in one of his interviews, he talked about when they were talking about whether our pets would be able to talk or not. and somebody had made the comment that our pets would be they're far more interesting right now not being able to talk to us than if they could talk to us. Can you imagine if your cat could talk to you? Like, I don't think I want to hear that. They would just be talking back to you the whole time. Hey, can you get up and move off the couch? No, I'm not moving. There's no way. You're never going to make me move. Come over here and try it. That's how the cats are. And if you're a cat person, I'm sorry. Straight up ask NDE and in hell. I realize Satan hasn't yet been cast into the lake of fire, but don't think people in hell could be abused by Satan's spirits or under punishment can't do whatever they want. Yeah, so you hear about these NDEs experiences where these demonic creatures are just torturing them and it is the worst kind of experience. And I think that there just like there are hierarchies inside of the angelic realms in terms of the holy angels, there's also hierarchy inside of the demonic fallen angel ranks. And so I think that those things that are currently in hell torturing people that go there are like the bottom of the bottom, right? Because a fallen angel who thinks that he is worthy of being God is not going to subject himself, even if he could take delight in torturing and killing people or torturing people. He's not going to want to stay down there. Like those guys, egos are the biggest egos in the planet, like in the universe. That's beneath them. That's for the lower. So the fallen angels, they have their own hierarchical structure, like a military. And those things down there, I think, are real, but I think they're at the very bottom. And you got to remember, there's probably trillions of angels, more than trillions, and a third of those fell and decided to follow Lucifer. And you know, uh, uh, there's only 8 billion people on the planet, and there's trillions and trillions of fallen angels. Yeah, there's going to be, there's those things all set up. Okay, Pamela Minnick, what are your thoughts about people who see things before they die? About 2 weeks before my daughter died, she asked her husband, "Who is that standing behind you?" Yeah, I think that that absolutely can be the case. I know that in my own personal story, I heard I heard somebody say something to me that was clear as day. It was as real as a real event as if somebody were talking to me in real life. I mean, it was the same thing. Somebody said something to me, and I turned and looked, and there was nobody there. And then I'm like, okay, Anyways, the point is that these things happen, and just because we can't understand it, it doesn't make any sense to us, or there's no scientific, logical reason why it happened. It still happened, and we have to kind of square with that. And I think that absolutely that um, certain people, for whatever God's reasons, allows them a peek behind the veil, or whatever the case is, or I don't know. I don't know the reasons. All I'm sure it's different for every case, but I know that it can happen, and I believe that it happens. Tracy Mark, question: how do you see Ezekiel 38 playing out, and do you think it's near? So I explained earlier, kind of about everybody coming from all the different directions. I think that given the current state of geopolitics today, there's not going to be any nations that are really going to want to mess with Israel or the United States, given the power projection that we have and the capabilities that we have. With that said, I think there's a lot of resentment, anger, hostility, vitriolic, malevolence, uh, all being just ramped up and stored right now, and it's building. And I think that the rapture is going to provide that crisis and the crescendo where they're going to use that as the reason to attack, because the United States is going to be in various states of disarray, chaos, etc., whatever. that's going to throw the rest of the world into a state of chaos, to include Israel. I don't, but I think that by the time Israel gets to that place, they have to have subdued all those threats around them, and they've basically done that. Now I know that the Houthis, I think, launched some missiles today. Um, but if Israel's going to be in a state where they are living securely without, they're going to have to deal with the threats around them. And we always liken that to like the Psalm 83 conflict that would precede the Ezekiel 38 conflict, or not 38, yeah, 38 conflict, because it would take out the immediate threats first, and then the Ezekiel 38 would deal with the larger threats from afar. And we've seen that. I don't know if what's happened here is Ezekiel 38 or not. It seems like it fits, kind of checks those blocks, and it seems like the actors for um, Ezekiel 38 are also in position, and everybody's just kind of waiting for the right crisis to happen before they make their move, and that right crisis will be the rapture. And do I think it's soon? I think it's very soon. Um, I think it's obviously we believe in the doctrine of imminence. We don't know the exact day or the hour, but I think we can all generally sense the season, and we all know that we're in the season. When exactly in that season? Don't know. But I know if we go past 2026, I'm going to have to recalculate my 6 day theory, because it's not going to make any sense at that point, and it will have broken historical trends and stuff, all other manners. So we'll have to wait and see. But all right. Well, hey guys, I think that's kind of it for tonight. But again, next weekend I have Mark on. It'll be a little bit earlier next weekend just because of my other engagements. Wednesday, or excuse me, Sunday. Speaking at Winchester, I'll be talking about this, but I'll have the slideshows and more of the more in depth and stuff. But that'll be. I think it's going to be at 10:30 ish Eastern time, so probably 9:30 Central. And you guys can, I think they're going to live stream it, so you guys should be able to watch it then. And once we get the link, I'll share the link and stuff for that. Tuesday, I forgot about this. I did an interview last week with David Fiorosa on specifically just on this conflict between Iran and Israel, more focused on the military capabilities. That's coming out Tuesday. So look for that on his channel, which is a Worldview Matters. Again, I'll be working out all week long. I'll be out of the net, so I'll be back in the hotel here in the evenings, but like I'll be out of cell phone range for most of the day, every day. This week's gonna be pretty crazy. So that'll post on Worldview Matters Tuesday. I don't know if I'll have internet access to drop it, but if I do, I'll drop it like later that night or that evening or something when I get back to civilization. And I think that's the main thing. So Tuesday with Worldview Matters with Dave Fiorosa, and then Sunday the live streaming at the church, and then Saturday with Mark, and then Sunday. I don't know. It's all getting mixed up in my head. So and then I need to reschedule with Alex Newman, and I need to get Jonathan Bretner on. I was going to do that here this last few weeks, but got sidetracked by some other stuff. So Susan, can you do a video on the 144,000, please? Ah, I will look at that. Is Chooch in the house? Brother Chooch here? Um, I feel really left out. I mean, Tyler's got a beard, Chooch has got a beard, Tom's got a beard. Like everybody's got beards, so I had to be like the cool kids and try and grow some facial hair just to fit in with the rest of these guys. And Alex Newman's got a beard. Tom Hughes has got like everybody's got beards. Uh, yes, Alex is, and he's fantastic, man. I felt so terrible tonight, not being able to just connect with him in the right time. And anyways, that's my burden to shoulder. So, well, thank you guys. Oh, man, what a week. Please pray for those people in Texas. Pray for the families. Um, you know, what I went through with my daughter last summer, and she recovered. I can't even imagine that other scenario. Like, it just kills me. And anyway, so just pray for those families, pray for peace. And if anything that I took away from this near death experience studies with John Burke and his videos, the work that Chris Putnam's done, and others, is that when children are in these situations, especially the stories that, if you go back and find the book, Supernatural Worldview, there's some stories about children that were, they didn't die, but there was a car accident. The car rolled down a ravine. I mean, it was, nobody would have known it was there. This is in California along that Pacific Highway, somewhere in there. And this little kid was in the back of the car, and I don't forget the cause of the accident, but the child was eventually rescued after like 6 days in the wilderness. And the whole time the child was like, there was this angel with me the whole time. And it's just so cool, like things like that happen, and they happen so much more than we even realize. So I know the loss of any child is a hell beyond anything any parent ever wants to experience. But God is there with them through all of that. And let me close with this. This is from Nahum 1:7. The Lord is good, a refuge in times of trouble. He knows those who trust in him. So know this, that God knows you. God knows exactly what situation you're in, whatever that situation that is. He knows you better than you know yourself, and he knows your future. So we, myself included, need to learn to trust him more and to let go and let God. I know that sounds so cliche, but when we think about how little we actually control in our lives, it's this comfort in realizing that we are connected with the creator of the universe in a very intimate way, that we can look to him as a father, and as a son or daughter, an heir of the kingdom, that we can cast our cares before him, and that he listens and he knows those things. And the fact that those prayers step out of time into eternity, and who knows, which ways those things have been working. I don't know. It's pretty amazing. The idea of where our prayers go when they leave when they leave our lips. So, anyways, guys, God bless you all. Hope you have a great rest of your night. Enjoy your weekend. Please be weather aware. Be spiritually aware. And we'll see you guys on Monday. Take care. God bless.